I'm voting leave because I think that the British people ought to elect politicians that they can hold to account that make all their laws.
I want out of the EU so we govern ourselves, control our borders and trade with the world again and not be stuck in a declining trade bloc.
I'm not so much voting for Britain to leave the EU, I'm voting to split up the European Union. It's a very powerful way that the rulers of all different countries in Europe come together to essentially shore up their position at the rest of ours' expense.
I think we will regain our confidence as a country. We're the fifth biggest economy in the world, and we'll realise that actually people want to trade with us regardless of whether we're in the EU.
A particular bugbear of mine is that we have to pay VAT on sanitary products because they're considered a luxury good. We can't change that. The Prime Minister has asked the EU permission to change that. He shouldn't have to ask permission.
The majority of immigrants are low-skilled entry-level workers, and we need more skilled professionals, and we can't do that with the current system because the EU system is actually discriminatory. It's quite a racist system. If you are European, it's free entry. If you're not, you're back in the queue.
What we don't see is the nasty side of the EU, what it's doing in terms of policing the Mediterranean, what it's doing in terms of shipping migrants back illegally, and most of all we're not really seeing the extraordinary wave of austerity programmes and cuts, and for me that's actually fundamentally what the EU is about. We get the carrots but they get the stick.
If we were to make our own laws based on the politicians that we've elected ourselves, we are in a much better place to repeal anything that has an adverse effect on us.
The likelihood is I'll be working for either an entrepreneur or a small to medium-sized business, and the EU doesn't work for those. They work for the big banks, they work for the big corporations who lobby at EU level. I think the EU is fundamentally anti-democratic. We'd be stronger outside. A stronger democracy means a stronger economy.
I think some people want to remain in the EU because there's a lot of brainwashing in our schools and colleges telling them to think that way.
Particularly young people forget that before the EU we were able to travel to various different EU countries and trade with them, and that we don't need the EU to allow us to do that. Britain can do a lot better when we're freed up from the bureaucracy of Europe and we can go into the world and trade with other countries.